financials.com.
On
Or
YouTube, we're
call
going to go live on air
010
very shortly.
7243. Page Financials taking you further. Hi, my name is Julie. My name is Isaac Brown. I'm Ray, and you're listening to
People
the
are
Smooth
already
Breakfast
sending
Show.
me comments.
Really?
Breakfast? Is that breakfast?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Don't even think about touching that now.
Interesting.
The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis on national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Okay.
Get quick access to loans from Page Financials. Page Financials, taking you further.
Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. I am Ayo Myro Essay. You're most welcome to today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. This is where we bring you detailed analysis of the day's national news headline stories. And we are ready to go. And by we, I mean Oyemi Emmanuel. Morning, Oyemi Emmanuel Adewibe. How are you?
Morning, Ira. That's
Good
a
morning.
mouthful.
A
Good morning,
mouthful.
Lagos.
Excellent. Good to have you on the show. We also have Devo Okorie. Good morning, Devo. How are you today?
I'm fine. Good morning, Vegas. Morning, Miami. Who's the boss? Us or them?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are you sure you're okay? Your voice sounds
Like
like you're recovering. You have a cold in
from?
It's been cold.
You tell me what
No,
you're recovering
it's
from.
just the gremlins.
Gremlins. All right. Okay, if you'd like to join the conversation, we're streaming live on YouTube. So go on to youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. You can also send your comment to us through our WhatsApp platform. The number is 0809 444 0981. Diva, I'll be starting with you this morning, and it's been trending for a few weeks. In fact, some people have said, why are we talking about it? There are bigger issues in Nigeria, but obviously the government thinks it's very important as they've sent a high-power delegation to meet with the Twitter boss. But here's the headline from the Guardian newspaper. Twitter's operation illegal despite ECOWAS court ruling, federal government insists. 18 days after the micro-blogging platform Twitter was suspended in Nigeria, the federal government insists operations of Twitter in the country's social media space is not legally permissible. Now, this was made known by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, yesterday when he appeared before a House of Representatives investigative hearing. He said Twitter was used to disseminate information that endangers the life and security of Nigerians and cause disunity in the country. I want to just point out one thing he said I'd like you to touch on as well, Divo, which is that foreign companies shall not carry on business in Nigeria or exercise any powers of a registered company if they are not incorporated as a separate entity in Nigeria. Please take us through the story.
Well, it's raging because it affects the largest constituency in this country, which is the youth. And we cannot, even though this is Youth Month, we cannot stress more about how this country is improperly structured. This is also part of the restructuring that we refer to. How can how would I call them, the influential minority, which are the older ones, maybe also because they have most of the means, which is where the issue of chronic inequality comes to play, be dictating to the larger majority, which are the youths that constitutes 75% of our population. What is the population of the country called Nigeria? We're talking about 200 million individuals as of the last count. So we're saying that the youth that constitute about 150 million individuals, in which most countries you don't even get up to that amount, deserve not only to be heard, but deserve to actually be in the corridors of power and administration. So this is why anything that affects the youths must get attention. And the truth is, if you're not careful, depending on how you handle this, you will get negative reactions.
Yes.
Now, since Twitter was suspended, this is almost about 3 weeks, the FG is still insisting that on its position. And despite a court ruling, yes, that took place in Abuja, sitting of the ECOWAS court, whereby I think SERAP and a few civil organizations had taken the federal government up.
Individuals, actually, 197
Yes,
Nigerians.
and 107 joint suits against its position and the court did rule that the federal government could not harass, arrest, or prosecute anyone who was found using Twitter as a position enunciated by the Attorney General of Nigeria upon the banning of Twitter. Now, there was an investigative hearing held by the House of Representatives, where Lai Mohammed, that's the Minister of Information, was called to speak. And in his presentation, he mentioned that in two reasons. One, that Twitter was a foreign company that operates in Nigeria, that it was not registered or incorporated, so it had flouted the CAMAC 2020. Secondly, Twitter was carrying out activities that were capable of destabilizing the country. And I think we had already spoken to this, where they said some tweets were not seen as what do you call it, cessationist tweets, speaking to violence and all of that.
Yeah.
However, a mild drama ensued when the convener of the Coalition of Defense of Nigerian Democracy, Ario Atoye, took up his hand to make a statement during the public hearing, and he was shut down and ruled out by the chairman of the committee, who said that the Minister of Education would be the only person presented. But he insisted, and this was the drama, that he was there as a Nigerian observer. He had the right to be heard, and that the minister was wrong in his position, that here was a minister who defended the right for an independent media when he was in opposition. That what could have happened now that he finds himself in power. Now, and also some committee members, some House of Rep members in the committee did express their grievances. The actions of the executives could be seen as we're bordering on totalitarianism. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, to that effect, Twitter had reached out to the federal government, to the president of the country, to see how they could address the suspension. And it was announced that the federal government had set up, that's through the presidency, had set up a committee to discuss with Twitter. And this is even where we begin to look at who is the boss. And in this committee, there are several ministers, including the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Pantami, the Minister of Information himself, Lai Mohammed, the Attorney General, Malami, the Super Minister of Works and Housing, that is Raji Fashola, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Godfrey Oyema, the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Festus Keyamo, and other top government agencies. You would really wonder, honestly, this is a high-powered committee. Are we discussing World War III? But, you know...
funny, but not funny.
What is the end?
Yes. Now, the federal government seems to really to be wowed up by this. And I would always state the warning to the federal government and to the party in power, that is the APC.
Yep.
When you meddle in matters that affect 75% of your constituency, you need to be careful at the approach that you take. Your mandate is based on our interest. I repeat myself, your mandate is based on our collective interest. When you continue meddling in matters, because one would say, what is really your issue? This was triggered to the understanding of many by the deletion, the delete of the president's tweets, which the federal government has argued that it's not, that they had been monitoring and watching Twitter, and they've said that these same regulations would apply for every other social media and digital platform. But many have argued that this is bordering on censorship, on a form of regulation which in the American and the EU positions discourages the freedom of speech and human rights position for Nigerians.
All right, thank you very much, Devo, for that detailed analysis. We have from Mr. CNVI, Twitter illegal, but the president, AGF, governors, NAS, and MDAs open accounts with it. This suggestion reeks of gross ignorance and desperation. Federal government disobeys own law, flouts workers' pension remittance. Punch newspaper reports 7 years after the federal government amended the Pension Reform Act, which stipulates that employers should remit 18% of workers' monthly emolument into their RSAs. the government is yet to comply with its own law. Let's talk about this. And that's another, yesterday we talked about the court ordering the government to pay Bayelsa State millions of dollars as accrued from 2003 to 2017 for excess for the price of crude oil going above $20. And today we hear of Rivers and I think another, I can't remember the next second state now. And what people kept saying was, let them order, they will not obey. Is there a flagrant regard of the rule of law by this current government?
It's character. It's character, Ayo. And for me, it's really disappointing because I mean, if your family is misbehaving, check out the behavior of the head of the family, you know. And it's become the trademark of this government across the family. I mean, the last story we talked about, there is a court order that you should obey based on your agreement. Nigeria is a party to the ECOWAS treaty and and even the procedure in the court, in the ECOWAS court. So why would you in any way, flout orders of the court? And we can go back in time, as there are still orders as far back as 2012, as far back as 2015, because the government is one, right? As that are yet to be obeyed, by the government. So, it's that. I think what is the bigger issue here for me is that you're undermining the workers, right? I think that's what I would focus on. And then it's double standards, because the regulator, the pension regulator, has in recent times gone really hard at companies who are not complying. So on what basis do you have, what's the right standing that you have to go against companies for non-compliance?
Exactly.
If a company read this story, a mischievous company would just write to the income authority and say, even the federal government is
I want
not
to
paying.
take Abayomi's comment and respond to that, because some people might be thinking this way as well, that he thinks the headline is misleading, that federal government flout its own law, since they were not the ones that created the law, so it's not their own law.
No, you don't say that. Government is one. Government
Is a
continuum. When we divide those things, our parties, and I like this thing, because we always get into that character that the party of the day is the leadership. No, and that's why we have the chaos we have. The party is only a vehicle to the leadership that is formed by time. The Nigerian government is the people's mandate, and it is continuous.
Yes.
So
whether you made the law or not, as long as it's the law of Nigeria.
If it's 2014, we're still following laws that are land use Act 1978. So you're going to tell me that it's not passed by the government of the day, then it's not that's not how it works. So it's not accurate to view it that way.
All right, thank you for making that clarification. All right, let's move on to our next story very quickly, Dico. And that is that CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, and the Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria moved to reduce price of rice. They've concluded plans to distribute 27,000 metric tons of rice paddies directly to millers nationwide on Thursday, June 24, that's tomorrow, as a move to reduce the price of rice. Currently, it's said that a bag of rice is going for 30,000 naira, which is
Yes, as you know, currently the country is facing some level of heightened inflation, obviously due to two reasons. One, the insecurity, and with its snowball effect in terms of farmers are not able to get out the proper yield because of the attacks on the farm. Secondly, even traders, those who take produce to the various markets for trade or processing, have been facing some level of attack. So this reduces the supply. Therefore, obviously, you have almost a cost push and demand push inflation at the same time. However, the CBN, that's the Central Bank of Nigeria, in conjunction with the RIFAN, that's the Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria, have concluded plans to distribute about 27,000 metric tons of rice paddies directly to millers on the 24th of June. And the CBN, speaking to its Acting Director of Communications, Osita Wambashu, did say that this would start in the states where rice production harvest have been the greatest. Now, generally, what this means, as you know, the rice paddies, which have been part of the difficulty from the farmers, would be enhanced. And if the millers have this upfront, it will enable them to produce rice that they could push out to the market eventually, which, in a way, as you know, if you increase supply, that should address to some extent the price in the markets. Now, we don't know, the article doesn't speak to that should address the pricing to some extent. However, the issue of the insecurity still exists. This action by the CBN has been one of the efforts that they have been employing to address food security within the country, especially working with various banks like Unity Bank, and ensuring that Nigerians do meet up in our desires for internal production and consumption of food.
All right.
And this thereby would create a lot of savings instead of spending our daily scarce forex on importation of milk, importation of corn, importation, that's for poultry, importation of rice, importation of a lot of our staple foods.
Yeah.
So it's a trying season, but we will be watching to see how these efforts by the CBN will affect the staple food and supply of rice.
Thank you very much, Divo. We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, I'll take some comments and then we'll resume with the stories. Worry is the man, you know.
Now don't get sad. Okay.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, what happened? Tell me. Oh, is that about the comment? The comment.
Now, I'm not going to comment, but I even wanted to make a comment on the Twitter story.
Okay.
So there was one guy who's the representative of the president to the House of Reps who said that we should go back to scratch. Scrap everything social media and go back to scratch. I thought it was ridiculous.
Living in 1960s.
Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. I'm Ayo Myra SA. It's still freshly pressed 91. From our comment section on WhatsApp, we have 0809 444 0981. Also on YouTube, we're streaming live. You can send your comments there and have a conversation. Emeka Mamo says, when I saw the list of delegates going to negotiate with Twitter, I thought we were going to negotiate a nuclear deal or something. Quite an overreach, if you ask me. And then Michael Adetutu says, this is quite funny for the federal government to flout their own policy. Then how do they want the private companies to adhere to those policies? This is the same government that wants to borrow from pension savings. This shows a broken system. Yinka says it's not really about moving to reduce the price of this and that or rice. It's about banning all those food cartels, and we have a price regulatory and monetary body. I thank you very much. Let's go on to our next story. Court sentences ex-rep Farouk Lawan 7 years imprisonment. This is a win for the EFCC, if I do say so myself. The High Court of the Federal Capital Territory sitting at Akpo on Tuesday convicted and sentenced the former chairman of then House of Representatives Ad hoc Committee on Fuel Subsidy Probe, Mr. Farouk Lawan, to 7 years imprisonment.
Okay, so for those who may not remember, Mr. Farouk Lawan was a House of Rep member, and he allegedly requested a bribe or took a bribe from a private citizen, Mr. Femi at the time. And this has been pending since 2012. So for me, I think while I celebrate this, I am still worried that it takes 12 years to resolve something as critical as that, it's 12 years too long, and I think maybe I'm looking at the trends. Earlier, I think last week or this week, last week, Mr. Tuche of PHB was also, his case was also closed. There seems to be a trend that the new EFCC leadership that's under Mr. Bauer seems to be working on old cases and closing them. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I think we probably should look at and see this happen more. It's very important that the lead time to completion be closed. It doesn't make sense that this kind of case, or even basic fundamental human rights cases, I don't want to draw in an irrelevant matter, but look at what's going on with some of the complaints we've seen in the news of people not getting bail for over 8 months and having to stay in jail for that. So I think that's, for me, is the bigger issue. We need to urgently close the lead time for most of these cases. It's good to see the case come to an end. We need more cases on corruption process. We also need the actual corrupt people also.
I'm not satisfied.
I'm not
Despite
satisfied.
that, this is the House of Reps member.
I am
He's a high-profile member.
So you see that mentality that he's a House of Reps member. It's not a victim mentality we should be adopting. It's the rule of law. If somebody breaches the law, it doesn't matter who he is, he should be taken through the process, and the right measures according to the law must be applied. So whether you're a House of Rep member, it doesn't excite me that he's the House of Rep member. If the criminals that are still House of Rep members that are walking free, or that are even instigating the legal system in case us, I mean, look at where we're coming from with all the chosen strike and inefficiencies. So I'm not excited about that. I'm actually pained by the fact that it takes 12 years to close this kind of matter. And our justice system is littered with all of that. A lot is being done, but more needs to be done, and urgently so.
All right, thank you, Mr. C. Thanks a lot for pointing that out. It's the ICPC. Let me not go and take someone's glory and give it to somebody else. That's the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC. I thank you so much. Divo, let me come back to you. Senate begins probe of Buhari's economic recovery plan. So it looks like the Senate, they're really, probing things, checking things as they ought to, as they should. The Senate on Tuesday mandated 6 of its committees to investigate the federal government's economic recovery and growth plan between 2017 and 2020. Let me ask you, do you think that the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, would present herself before this investigative committee? Because we know from precedents that some of these high-powered ministers do not present themselves in the. Let's go through this already, please.
No, but you raise a question and it's out there already, so it must come with an answer. But in fairness to, let's refer to her as Dame Zainab Ahmed, she has been very cooperative with the legislator. So she has always shown up. She's always answered questions that are put forward to her. And in this case, it's not a summons. It's actually just an investigative hearing as well. So the Senate has mandated the 6 committees to engage. So the word they'll be doing is simply for them to actually come out with the proper position and submission back to plenary. They will require the support of the Minister of Finance and National Planning. And as you know, it doesn't just mean that she has to be there herself answering every question. She will come with the retinue of all the agencies and organs, departments under her to also support in that hearing. Now, basically, the Senate is raising an investigative hearing to probe the economic and recovery growth plan instituted by this administration earlier on in its first tenure. And they're looking at a period of 2017 to about 2020. So that's about 4 years of the ERGP. And they want to confirm whether it has actually delivered on its objectives. Now, there are about 6 committees that have been geared towards doing this, and they want to confirm in a few cases whether this Appropriation Act did deliver the sustainable and inclusive growth which the President had presented to the House across the years in terms of budget performance. Now, it sounds like a very large action to take. By now, you'd have expected our Senate to have reviewed this long before now. You would wonder why they're doing this at this point, because if you haven't probed it, what was the basis of you passing the budget all these years? Now they're asking questions about did the ERGP in those years deliver on economic transformation? Was it improved? Was national productivity improved? Have we achieved food and energy security as stipulated? And there's so many issues that will come from this. I mean, I think Nigerians already know some of the answers to these questions in terms of how government has struggled to meet up with budget performance, which I think has usually been around 30 to 40%, even though budgets have been passed somehow timely. However, performance hasn't been as expected. And they spoke about the SMEs, how empowered have the SMEs been, because the president did say that the reasons for the extensive budgets and borrowings were to bring about some level of inclusion and diversification within the markets. So you would be speaking to the issues of subsidies that have dogged this administration for some time past in some of the social services like electricity and supply of petroleum, how they've been able to keep the pump price down despite the rise in crude price, which has created a loss to the government, a revenue drain on our foreign. With just about 2 years left for this administration, I really wonder, even if they come out with a position on this committee, what they're going to do.
Thank you very much. Buhari promises to bequeath better policing system this day. President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to bequeath a citizen-led policing system to the nation at the end of his 8-year rule in 2023. He said a few of these. He said a few of the things he plans to do in a speech delivered on his behalf by the Minister of Police Affairs, Mr. Megeri Dingyai. He spoke yesterday at the passing and parade of 418 officers of the 3rd Regular Cadet Force at the Nigeria Police Academy in Kano.
Okay, so I think my first joy is that I am happy that the president is using words like bequeath. Because it shows an understanding of legacy, but it might just be too late. These are issues that have been on the table for so long. But let's not be negative, because this has been a critical discussion. You recall that it was center of the MSAS protests, reform the police, all of those points, and some of the things that he's highlighting as the steps that the government is taking are critical. So they're talking about a new pay structure for policemen. We don't have the numbers, so we can't critique whether they are yet to earn a living wage, because as it is, the police do not earn a living wage. He's talking about public-private partnerships to aid the communications network of the police. That's very critical because the communications network would increase their efficiency and ability to deliver on the responsibilities across the nation. So that's a good move, but then it must be indeed a public-private partnership. As we see the trend in many cases, it's just one backyard gentleman agreement. It has to be one that we can trust, for it to meet the standards. And he talks about also bill reforms that are being made. He references the Police Act that was enacted in September 2020. It's good on paper, but it has to have legs. Laws don't sit. Laws aren't implemented on paper. They have to have legs and hands. People need to feel the impact of the law. So the implementation is critical, and we hope that that's front and center, for the president and his team. Bigger issues didn't come out though. There's been issues around, how do we actually make our policing system more efficient? Decentralization. We're graduating for 18 cadet officers. Is that sufficient? How many? Those statistics are actually, you make policy from data. So I don't see that part properly, articulated in the list of things that are being done, and I think they form an integral part of the